Welcome to Deep Dive.
We are glad you are here.
Real topics, real conversations.
Let's explore, reflect, and learn.
Welcome to the first episode of Deep Dive. In today's episode, we're exploring the neuroscience of Rahmah, mercy and compassion, a fascinating topic that reveals the timeless wisdom of the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and how they align remarkably with the neurological and biological needs of the human body. Join us as we uncover the science behind compassion and discover why the prophetic way is not only spiritually enriching, but also deeply beneficial for our minds and bodies. Let's dive in.
What if I told you that pure empathy, like the exact thing we are constantly told the world needs more of, is actually what's causing your burnout?
I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive when you first hear it, right?
It really does. Because usually when we talk about fighting for a cause or, even just carrying the heavy emotional load of caring for a sick family member, we just assume empathy is this endless fuel.
Right, exactly.
You see something unjust or someone you love is hurting, and that initial spark of outrage or deep sorrow just propels you forward. You push through, but then inevitably you hit a wall.
Yeah, the burnout wall. And for a long time, society has treated that specific type of emotional burnout as a failure of character.
Like you just aren't trying hard enough.
Exactly. People think they just lack the willpower to keep caring.
But stepping into the stack of sources for today's deep dive completely changes that narrative.
It really does. It flips it on its head.
So our mission today is to shatter this imaginary wall that we always seem to build between spirituality and neurobiology.
Oh, absolutely. It's an artificial divide.
Right. We are exploring how the Islamic framework of Rahmah, which translates to profound mercy and compassion, provides a really precise neurobiological blueprint for sustainable activism and care.
Yeah, we are looking at the human brain and our innate moral disposition as perfectly designed by Allah.
Perfectly designed.
Not random.
Exactly, design. And when you look at that divine design through the lens of cutting-edge effective neuroscience, the polyvagal theory, and clinical studies on cellular aging, you see that it maps perfectly onto classical Islamic theology.
It's amazing.
The biology literally demands the exact spiritual framework that Islam provides.
It's a phenomenal connection. But before we can really understand how to sustain that beautiful, compassionate state of Rahmah, we have to look at what destroys it first.
Right. We have to talk about unmanaged anger.
Yeah, because anger is almost always the starting point of any push for justice.
It is. When you perceive an injustice, your brain's threat detector, the amygdala, immediately takes over. It just hijacks everything.
It completely bypasses your logical, rational thought processes in the prefrontal cortex and triggers the sympathetic nervous system.
Wait, I struggle with this, though. I mean, if I am not angry about a glaring injustice, aren't I just being complacent?
That's a really common pushback.
Doesn't the outrage literally fuel the fix? Like, why is it biologically dangerous to just stay angry?
Well, so anger is an excellent alarm bell. It points out that a problem exists.
Right.
But operating continuously from that amygdala-driven state makes ethical, strategic activism physically impossible.
Physically impossible.
Yes. In the brainstem, you have this tiny cluster of neurons called the locus coeruleus.
Okay, the locus coeruleus.
Think of it as the brain's ultimate panic button. When the amygdala sounds the alarm, the locus coeruleus floods your system with norepinephrine.
So that's the fight or flight chemical.
Exactly. Your heart rate spikes, your breathing gets shallow, and your body literally prepares for physical combat.
So you are walking around in a state of mortal danger, even if you're just, reading a news article on your phone.
Exactly. And crucially, the mechanism of that fight or flight state causes your cognitive focus to narrow drastically.
Oh, like tunnel vision.
Right. It's a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
If you are facing a physical threat, you don't need to appreciate the nuance of the situation.
You just need to survive.
Exactly. So you lose sight of context and you lose sight of shared humanity. You cannot build sustainable justice when your brain is chemically forcing you into tunnel vision.
Wow. Which brings us to a remarkable piece of guidance from the hadith of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Yes, this is fascinating.
He advised, when one of you becomes angry while standing, let him sit down. If the anger leaves them, well and good. If not, then let them lie down.
Right.
For centuries, I think people understood that purely as spiritual etiquette. Just a nice, polite way to calm down.
Just take a breath, have a seat.
Yeah. But the neuroscience connection here is a direct physiological override.
It is. It relies on the mechanical realities of human biology. So we have these pressure sensors in our blood vessels called baroreceptors.
Baroreceptors.
Their entire job is to constantly measure our blood pressure relative to gravity.
Relative to gravity.
Yeah. When you are standing up, gravity is pulling your blood downward, away from your head.
Oh, so the locus coeruleus, that panic button we talked about,
Yeah.
it has to fire rapidly just to keep your blood pressure high enough to supply your brain with oxygen while you stand.
You've got it. You are already in a state of higher neurological alertness just by being vertical.
That is wild.
That is the fundamental mechanism.
Yeah.
So when you follow the prophetic advice to sit down or recline, gravity isn't fighting your blood flow in the same way.
Because you're horizontal.
Right. The baroreceptors immediately sense the change and signal your brain that it is safe to drop the blood pressure. Sitting down mechanically slows the release of those stress chemicals.
It acts as a biological dimmer switch for the threat response.
Exactly. And once that threat response dims, your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest network, takes over.
And then the prefrontal cortex comes back online.
Yes. Control is finally returned. That is where your ethical reasoning, your strategic planning, and your emotional regulation actually live.
Which you just cannot access while standing in a state of rage.
You physically cannot.
Okay, so let's say you do that. Your body is regulated, the blinding anger subsides, and you have your prefrontal cortex back online. We reach the next hurdle.
Right.
How do we actually relate to the suffering we are trying to alleviate? Like I mentioned at the top of the show, society constantly tells us that the answer is more empathy.
That's the prevailing narrative, yeah.
If we just had more empathy, the world would be fixed. But the neuroscience reveals that pure empathy is a biological trap.
It really is. Research led by Dr. Tania Singer at the Max Planck Institute makes a vital distinction here between empathy and compassion.
Okay, what's the difference?
Well, pure empathy, structurally speaking, is feeling someone else's pain as if it were your own physical pain.
Literally feeling it.
Yeah. When you observe someone suffering, your mirror neurons fire. This activates the anterior insula and the anterior cingulate cortex in your brain.
And scientists literally call that the brain's pain matrix.
Yes, the pain matrix.
I want you, the listener, to think about the last time you spent an hour doom scrolling through tragic news from around the world. You probably felt physically exhausted afterward.
Definitely.
Your brain is simulating the distress of those people so vividly that it registers as your own physical injury.
That mirroring leads directly to empathic distress. Your amygdala starts sounding the alarm again because your brain thinks you are under attack.
Oh, so it loops back to the panic button.
Exactly. Your system becomes overwhelmed, and you end up burning out, withdrawing, and shutting down entirely just to protect your own nervous system from the simulated pain.
But Rahmah operates entirely differently.
It does.
Rahmah aligns with active compassion. It shifts the brain's activity away from that draining pain matrix and moves it into the medial prefrontal cortex.
And the brain's reward centers, like the ventral striatum.
Right. Instead of just absorbing pain, your brain releases dopamine and oxytocin.
It creates a regulated pro-social motivation to help, which researchers often call a helper's high.
I love thinking about it like this. If empathy is like catching a cold from someone,
Right.
like absorbing their sickness until you're both exhausted in bed and neither of you can help the other, then Rahmah is like being the doctor.
That's a perfect analogy.
You step in to heal the illness without becoming infected by the despair.
Exactly. Rahmah transforms the passive, draining absorption of pain into a highly regulated motivation to serve. And what makes the Islamic framework so powerful here is that it anchors the activist in a divine purpose.
How so?
Well, Islamic theology roots human compassion in the infinite mercy of Allah. You aren't relying solely on your own limited emotional battery to fix the world.
Right, because that battery drains fast.
Exactly. You are acting as an instrument of divine mercy.
Which neurologically prevents that emotional collapse. But here's where it gets really complicated and honestly a little uncomfortable.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
We were always told oxytocin is the cuddle hormone. It's the key to love and connection.
Yeah.
But our sources point out a serious biological limitation here. Are you saying our own biology can actually make our activism prejudiced?
It is a harsh reality that any movement for justice must confront. Studies show that while oxytocin promotes warm, affiliative compassion, it strongly favors the in-group.
The in-group, meaning people like us.
Right. It promotes what neuroscientists call tend and defend behavior.
Tend and defend.
Yeah, it generates deep loyalty and a willingness to sacrifice for your own people, but it simultaneously increases suspicion, preemptive strikes, and hostility toward outsiders.
Let me wrap my head around this. Left to its own devices, human biology defaults to tribalism.
Pretty much, yes.
That is a terrifying thought when you are trying to build an equitable society, because it means you could have a group of highly bonded, deeply empathetic people who are capable of committing terrible atrocities against anyone they deem the other.
Precisely. If you build a movement purely on natural biological empathy without a higher ethical framework, you risk manufacturing exactly that kind of faction.
So biology alone isn't enough.
It's not. And this is where the Islamic intervention is absolutely critical. The Islamic framework actively overrides this biological limitation.
Okay, tell me how.
Well, Allah explicitly commands the Prophet, peace be upon him, to be a mercy not just to his tribe or his followers, but to all the world, the entirety of creation.
You see this beautifully illustrated in the Hadith of the 100 Mercies, which describes how divine mercy permeates all creatures.
Yes.
It's the reason a mare lifts her hoof so she doesn't crush her foal. That mercy isn't restricted by tribe or species, it is universal.
And the ultimate lived example of this is the Prophet, peace be upon him. After being rejected, stoned, and driven out of the city bleeding, he was offered the divine option to have the surrounding mountains crush his persecutors.
And he had every biological and emotional reason to allow that.
Absolutely. The tribal oxytocin response would say destroy the threat, but he chose mercy over retaliation. He prayed for their guidance and the guidance of their descendants.
To make that choice while actively bleeding requires immense neurological control.
It really does. By choosing universal Rahmah, this spiritual discipline forces the brain to utilize the theory of mind network.
Specifically a region called the temporoparietal junction, right? The TPJ.
Yes, the TPJ.
So think of the theory of mind network as your brain's virtual reality simulator.
I like that.
It allows you to step out of your own skull and guess what the other is feeling and experiencing. By engaging the TPJ, you are forcing your brain to humanize the other, actively stretching your compassion past the natural tribal limits of the oxytocin system.
Exactly. Which brings us to the practical application. How do we actually get there? If universal Rahmah is the ultimate goal, how do we make it our default state instead of just a fleeting heroic reaction?
Because nobody's just born with that level of constant control.
No, you have to build it.
That bridges the gap into the realm of neuroplasticity and the Islamic concept of tazkiyah, which is the purification and cultivation of the self.
Yes. And the golden rule of neuroplasticity is simple. Neurons that fire together, wire together.
So whenever you repeat a thought or an action, the brain physically strengthens the connection between the neurons involved.
It builds a neural superhighway.
Right. If you practice anger and reactivity, your brain builds a superhighway for anger.
But if you practice mercy, you physically thicken the neural pathways for compassion.
We really need to reframe how we view daily Islamic rituals. Like, if you are listening to this and you practice these daily rituals, you might think you are just fulfilling a spiritual duty.
Sure.
But structurally, you are doing executive function push-ups.
That's a great way to put it.
These rituals function as a rigorous, highly structured neurological workout. Let's break those down, starting with Salah, the daily prayer.
Okay.
In the modern world, stress accumulates slowly all day. Your cortisol, the primary stress hormone, rises with every frustrating email, every traffic jam, every piece of bad news.
It's a slow drip, and Salah acts as a forced pattern interrupt.
A pattern interrupts.
Yeah. By mandating that you stop, change your physical posture, disconnect from worldly stressors, and redirect your absolute focus to Allah multiple times a day, you are halting that slow drip of cortisol.
You are returning the brain to a baseline of humility and prefrontal regulation.
Exactly. And then consider the practice of fasting. From a neurobiological perspective, fasting acts as heavy resistance training for the prefrontal cortex.
Resistance training.
Yeah, because when you are fasting, your primal brain is sending powerful, urgent impulses to consume food and water.
It's screaming at you.
It really is. But by sitting with that urge and consciously choosing not to act on it because of a higher spiritual purpose, you are strengthening your executive control.
Oh, wow.
The mental muscle you use to suppress the urge to eat or drink is the exact same same neural circuitry you use to suppress a reactive, angry response in a social conflict.
That is mind-blowing.
Yeah,
You are building the gap between feeling a primal impulse and acting on it.
exactly.
We see similar structural benefits with sadhaka or charity.
Yes, definitely.
When you give away something of value to alleviate someone's hardship, it actively hacks the brain's reward system. You are literally wiring the act of generosity to physical pleasure and dopamine release.
You are training your brain to find joy in pro-social behavior rather than self-centered accumulation.
And we cannot forget the continuous remembrance of Allah.
Oh, the data on this is striking.
Right. Engaging in meditative, rhythmic mindfulness practices induces profound calmness.
Just 7 days of consistent mindfulness practice creates cellular-level restructuring in the brain's gray matter. 7 days.
So these daily obligations aren't just like spiritual checklists. They are resistance training for your executive function. You aren't just praying. You are physically building a better, more resilient brain.
You really are.
But activism isn't a solo sport. How does my calm, regulated brain actually help a chaotic protest or a stressed-out household?
That is the ultimate question. And this leads us directly to the polyvagal theory, which looks at the vagus nerve.
Okay, the vagus nerve.
It's a massive information highway connecting your brain to your internal organs. When you operate in a state of Roma, you activate the ventral vagal system.
The ventral vagal system is the pathway of social engagement and safety, right?
Yes. It acts as a biological brake pedal for your heart rate.
A brake pedal.
Right. And when a person maintains physical composure, breathes deeply, and practices active listening, they aren't just calming themselves down.
They're affecting others.
Yes. Through a process called neural coupling, they're actually co-regulating the nervous systems of everyone around them.
It is like tuning forks.
Yes. Perfect analogy.
If you have a small tuning fork vibrating frantically with panic, and you bring a larger, stronger tuning fork vibrating with a steady, calm frequency right next to it, the frantic one will eventually match the calm frequency.
Exactly. You are projecting your calm onto others, pulling them out of their own amygdala hijacks. Your presence alone becomes a neurological intervention.
That is incredible. And the long-term clinical data on living this way is just staggering.
It really is.
This constant neurological training doesn't just change our behavior in the heat of the moment, it literally alters our cellular aging.
Yeah, the Young Finns longitudinal study proved this.
What did they find?
They found that trait-like compassion, meaning compassion that has been practiced so consistently it becomes wired into your personality, directly leads to slower DNA methylation aging.
I want to make sure we really unpack the mechanism there. Like, how does being compassionate physically protect your cells?
Well, when you aren't bathing your cells in toxic cortisol from constant unmanaged outrage, your telomeres.
Those are the protective caps at the end of your DNA strands.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Your telomeres don't fray as quickly. Compassion physically acts as a chemical shield against the wear and tear of stress. The cells of a compassionate person literally age slower than the cells of someone living in chronic hostility.
The clinical data backs this up so dramatically. Engaging in pro-social behavior drops your overall mortality risk by 40%.
40%.
On the flip side, living in a state of hostility and isolation carries a health risk equal to smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
15 cigarettes a day. The biological cost of living in a state of constant, unmanaged outrage is immense.
It really reviews how seamlessly the theology and the biology intertwine.
It does.
The neuroscience doesn't replace the spiritual framework. It simply reveals the physical mechanics of how Allah designed the human being to thrive.
It makes me marvel at the concept of forgiveness in the Islamic tradition.
Yeah.
It isn't just about taking the moral high ground.
Oh, it's highly practical.
Choosing to forgive, choosing to let go of that toxic rumination is a physiological release valve. It protects your own cardiovascular system from a slow, lethal drip of stress hormones. You are optimizing your biology for longevity and resilience so you can actually stay in the fight for justice over the long haul.
It proves that we are structurally built to heal the world, provided we operate on the correct neural pathways. Sustainable activism only emerges when prefrontal brain regulation, deep compassion, and Islamic spiritual principles operate together in a unified system.
It is the necessary shift from the empathic distress that burns us out to the divine mercy that fuels us forward.
Exactly.
So to summarize everything we've explored today, Rahmah is not just a soft, poetic feeling. It is a profound, active neurobiological capacity, perfectly designed by Allah.
It's the blueprint.
And so I want to address you directly as you carry this forward into your own life. We know the golden rule. Neurons that fire together, wire together.
Right.
We know that every act of patience, every prayer, every moment of self-restraint literally thickens the neural pathways for mercy in your brain.
It physically changes you.
So ask yourself, what exactly is your brain wiring when you passively consume hours of outrage media on your phone? Or, when you quietly nurse a grudge on your commute home? What default state are you actively building for yourself tomorrow?
That's the real question.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the neuroscience of Rahmah. Try to apply a little intentional Rahmah in your very next interaction, because the next time you hit that burnout wall, remember, the blueprint to break through it isn't found in pushing harder or staying angry. It's found in the magnificent design of a merciful mind. See you next time.